morning. Good morning. You know, it's Sunday morning. And, man, Sunday morning should always start with a nice cup of coffee. That and probably a lot of gratitude. Sunday mornings always remind me of pastries, glazed donuts, snails they used to call those cinnamon rolls. Snails, they call them cinnabuns now, but I remember we used to call them snails. Quite different than the snails you see in the garden. And by the way, welcome. This is my morning office. I got a real love for the cedar trees. There's something about the branches, something about the way the branches intertwine that, I don't know, just sort of make me feel like I'm way up in the mountains, Koke'e, or way up in the Ko'olaus. But I'm not. I'm just here at my house. We're just here at my house on a Sunday morning, and we're getting ready for our brand new podcast, a new show. It's called Hindsite 2020. And it's a faith-based program. And we're going to be reviewing the news of the last week, Hindsite 2020, and how those news stories impact us as community. Not just economically, but socially, the behavioral patterns, and morally, and ethically, and spiritually. It's Sunday morning. You know, my grandfather would always say to me, if it doesn't begin right, how's it going to end right? So, we should begin with that cup of coffee, gratitude, and a morning prayer. So, shall we? Mai kaunali'o, mai kaunalipo, mai kahikina, mai kaulana, e hele mai o e atuei, e hele mai e ku, a hina, a tangaroa, a tāne, e hele mai e kanaha, e kalai, e kanawai, e hele mai oi e au makua. Mahalo ke akua. As above, so below. May it be on earth as it is in heaven. Please, give us this day and forgive us. Please, help us to forgive. Please, no temptation and no evil. Mahalo ke akua. May we be a blessing to each other. Mahalo ke akua. May you be a blessing to us all. Amama uanoa. Let's go. The other people are waiting. We should get started. I told them 7 o'clock, but it's that Sunday morning kind of 7 o'clock. You know, the almost 7 o'clock. You go. I'll catch up.
I have listened to my heart, and it speaks to me of danger, of danger. I have watched the tides of change in a homeland overrun with strangers, of a people lost at sea, adrift amid the noise and the frustration, losing all they hold dear.
Hey, good morning. Good morning. Sunday morning. Got that cup of coffee. Standing by. Reviewing the week. You know, oddly, the weeks are all running 1 week into the next. 1 week into the next. More COVID news, you know. I keep thinking to myself, can they have a press conference every day? Every day? From everywhere about COVID? And the answer clearly is yes. Yes, they can. They can have a press conference about any kind of disaster, which is a disaster in its own right. And speaking of disasters, you may or may not know that I work with the National Disaster Preparedness Training Center, along with so many other fine people who give up their time and their lives for the training of communities in readiness. And joining me, as always, this morning is Dr. Failal Tusi Avingleo, who also works with the National Disaster Preparedness Training Center. And we're going to switch live to Zoom. Polly, good morning. Nice to catch you with that cup of coffee. That's all I can say is hoping you got that cup of coffee. Thank you, Chris. Let's see if we got everybody online. Can we hear you?
Aloha.
Hey, fantastic. Nicely done. So good to see you this Sunday morning. Got my coffee right here. You know, this has, again, been a heck of a week. I just got a notice this week from effort to see a just transition. And I know that that's forward on our plates, a just transition to new Hawaii. But before we get into all of that, let's talk about a just transition with our families this morning. How's everybody over in Haula? I hope they're doing well.
We're having a wonderful time focusing on family.
I take it that opportunity brought to us by our Corona moment. Right? It's quite the shine. I mean, you look no worse for wear for having been trapped at home for X amount of weeks now.
It's been so wonderful. In fact, when people ask me how's it going, assuming that I'm addicted to work and all of the things associated with it, I just tell them, hey, brother, I'm on home vacation with Linda.
I like that, home vacation. Weirdly, it's like, I feel like I've never been busier, and yet we're just sitting around in the living room for the most part, talking to people via the computer and via these cameras. How's it been for you?
Patiently waiting for the next phase.
Right. And I'm so interested in the disparate sort of wide, far-reaching and far-ranging opinions in the community about what's occurring. I mean, I got right here in my house, right here in my very house, I got everything from, conspiracies of the sub-African continent to CIA exploitation of the moment to, Republican irresponsibility to democratic manipulation to, it's like, what, are you kidding me? Next thing you know, they're going to be accusing the kindergarten vice principal of having his hand in this. His dirty little hand from that elementary school. I don't know what to think. You know, it's kind of crazy that way. I know the science is pretty reliable. I know sometimes the news media is not. You know, but I also know, I know for a fact, without reservation, that the government is less than forthcoming. So, you know, if I was an American citizen, I would be a little put off by the circumstances of late, right? I would think, well, wait a minute, what's going on here exactly? And at the same time, coming from a culture that understands the potential for disaster during a health crisis, I understand the need for us to behave as sane people with everyone else's interests in mind and at heart. And I mean, I know Haula is a standalone, nationally recognized community for disaster preparedness. So when you look out from your balcony, how does the neighborhood look?
Well, there are many explanations, of course, and for why this and therefore that. But I love one of the stanzas in your opening song, and it's "Listen to Your Heart." One of the most important gifts that this moment has brought is the rare opportunity for very, very busy people to sit still and reflect. Whether you like it or not, you have no choice. Well, you do, but then either one can end up with your demise. But listening to your heart is so fundamental to the gifts of wisdom our ancestors shared with us. By listening to your heart, you can learn the language of the circus. That's a really special gift. And that special gift is to be able to commune with our ancestors, because it's through our hearts that we teach in our chants and our songs that they speak to us. So that way we don't get clouded, confused, or justly inspired for this reason or that, when it's far more gentle, it's far more subtle, it's far more tranquil, and it's far more compelling than all of that put together. Just sitting down for a moment, wherever you are, doing whatever you're doing, take a moment. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and just think, aloha. What comes, something happens. And if nothing's happening, keep on trying. But it's that's what being in Haula, being so far away from the more urbanized suburban areas, surrounded by nature where you hear the birds flying overhead. We can hear the surf. And it creates that very special moment of silence, that moment to reflect. And we thank, we thank our spiritual ancestors and the universe for this very special and very rare moment. Because if you don't seek it individually, or with a group, it will seldom happen. This one, it's imposed. You have a choice. You reflect or you suffer the consequences.
Yes, interesting. I like that. Imposition. You know, a timely imposition. Those of us who've worked in policy and planning and capacity building, you know, we have often talked about how this moment might come on the back of a raging storm, category 7, unlike anything ever seen, or massive earthquakes leading to tsunami and devastation. The Indian Ocean, that event, we were thinking, bring these changes. Not big enough, not big enough, right? World wars, wars in the desert that last for decades. Still not enough, not big enough, not, and yet the smallest thing, a tiny little microscopic virus, big enough to bring all the oil companies to a standstill, big enough to stop global economy, to halt tourism, and in doing so, to give the environment, our globe, our little terrarium we live in, an opportunity to recover. Amazing.
You know what comes to my mind is I have some very good friends who are physicians, and really blessed that they also hold traditional titles. So they have a wonderful sense of harmony when they're looking at injury of one form or another. And what they were able to do, then they shared with me, which actually they articulated it much better than I could, though I did have a strong sense of it, is that there's a difference between healing and curing. In fact, I was told they are inherently very different. And that was a very profound insight as far as I was concerned. And they said, well, you know, we're so busy trying to cure that we've forgotten how to heal. I said, what do you mean by that? Well, when you're curing, it essentially means eliminating all evidence of the disease. So if we carry it over culturally, sociologically, that almost means being so angry and bitter, you want to erase anything that brought you to this point. Erase anything from colonial, erase everything from corporations, erase it all. And that's curing. So you erase the evidence of the disease, but it doesn't mean you've healed anything. And I said, oh, okay. Healing means becoming whole. That's a little different. And that way you can heal without, or you can cure without healing, and you can't necessarily hear, and healing is not necessarily curing. And the concept of healing means all embracive, all encompassing. And the beauty of that is that it also includes the causes, so that the healing can be brought to those causes, those mindsets, those peoples, those institutions, those organizations can be brought into the greater whole of life with aloha. So the issue here, like you pointed out earlier, is transition. It takes time to transition. You don't just lop it off, because there's severe consequences, because so many things are connected to so many other things. So I've come to truly appreciate looking at curing and healing. And of course, the key medical or healing instrument, to put it in another way, is aloha.
Jimmy Love,
Hey, aloha, Jim.
good morning, good morning.
Good morning.
How you doing?
Good. Sorry to be a little late, as our dear friend and technical advisor suggested. Every day is Blur's Day.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was mentioning that how the weeks are turning one into the other during this COVID crisis, right? It's
Yeah.
like
Well,
how
it's
how
interesting to
many
drop
press
it.
releases can we get daily from
Yeah.
whoever on their COVID
From whatever
update?
source, from whichever source has a particular interest.
Ain't that the truth? And on a Sunday
Yeah.
morning, shouldn't it be a cup of coffee and talking about how things might be better?
It should be a cup of tea and us trying to write a new song is what it should be.
Yeah, I got you. You know, Bali was started with some guitar chops this morning.
Nice.
I was
Well,
regrettably,
it was interesting to drop in on the conversation, right? When Doc, you were talking about healing and curing and the interconnectedness and how aloha, and it's certainly if aloha also embraces the idea of connectivity and how, before anything else, we share the breath of life. My son Manny and his wife Avesa, our daughter, recently recommended a video that articulated the whole view of the COVID and viruses phenomenon, completely different than you would hear on the, corporate-owned media or just about anywhere else, which is that viruses are part of the mix that created us, that builds our systems, that makes life possible. And as soon as we start trying to omit that stuff, poison the bugs we don't like, kill the weeds we don't like, crush or eliminate the viruses that we don't like, we're becoming a part of the process of dis-ease or disease, as you often say, Kalani. And it's a remarkable video. This doctor, extremely bright doctor, his name is Zach Bush. And if anybody wants to check it out, it's an hour and 20-minute talk, interview talk. But just, go to YouTube and search for the doctor who predicted COVID, Zach Bush. And it's a very interesting explanation from an enlightened doctor who basically describes how the world medically and spiritually is connected. So I recommend it to anybody who might be listening because it really makes you feel, on one hand, it makes you feel like, hey, wait a minute, I really am a part of something bigger than me. And that's a great revelation to recognize.
I was wondering when everybody in the world would notice that the whole world is having a similar experience. I mean, how often does that happen? I mean, mostly in fiction. Fiction and movies or in a short story, the world might have a joint or similar experience. But I mean, talk about simpatico. Everybody in the world is going through these ridiculous press conferences.
Yeah, but one of the great points that he made was, we had flu virus before there were airplanes. We had countries contract the same flus before anybody could bring it over on an airplane or a boat. And he mentioned the whole, what was the boat that they held up in, was it San Diego for 2 weeks? And he said there was a great microcosm of what we were really facing because people on that boat had been affected or infected, had acquired the virus, but nobody died. Everybody, a few people got sick. And after 5 days, the thing basically had run its course. And, he suggested like every other virus, this COVID type virus will be gone in 2 years, essentially. Every SARS virus, everything like that runs its course.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. And the only thing that I guess is particularly nasty about this is who it targets now. It targets minority people over white European descendancy, and it targets elderly and people with pre-existing conditions, particularly respiratory. So it's actually from a CFO, a chief financial officer of the human race's perspective. Well, it's not a bad bug then. It gets rid of, sort of the fringe of society. It's not attacking our wholesome white bread center, so, this is an interesting thing. But my dad, like I said before, used to say, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. So,
Yeah.
for somebody like me who's both minority and pre-existing condition, something like this is, boy, am I glad I live in Hamakua.
Right. It could also be said, our case could be made for, well, most flu type viruses do target people with pre-existing conditions. That's not really new. But and as far as the lower classes, lower, maybe non-white classes go, aren't these the people that are bearing the greatest burden of stress in our world? Aren't these the people who are most susceptible, working long hours, several jobs, trying to make ends meet, worried about feeding their kids? They're kind of set up to be the first victims in a way.
Hey, you're not suggesting that all of these large sort of global malaises are specifically targeting the minorities as in like a class division?
No, I'm suggesting that the class division existed with or without the viruses. It still exists.
That's what I thought you were saying. That is precisely what I thought you were saying. The economics are just fundamentally an easy access port for the virus, for the disease. It, like all intelligent life, it takes advantage of an environment where it can flourish and be successful.
Sure.
And that would be, in the arena where people are less likely to get services.
Yeah. And, one of the other side effects that they talk about in this video, which really I hadn't thought about even, which was that here's a thing that has caused us to have our elders essentially die alone, separated from their families in an ICU with a respirator. And what could be more inhumane than that? What is the thing that triggers us to, isolate them and forget about this transition? It's like, we made a tremendous transition when we were born. And we make a tremendous transition when we die. And we are born into families, and we should die with our families, and a system, a medical system that doesn't recognize that is missing something really big.
I noticed we were all gray and we're all alone in the picture.
Yeah, well, it's the kind of thing we're thinking about more. We can kind of see the end of the tunnel.
I guess so. I feel like I've been laying in Plato's cave looking out the door for about 3 years, 4 years, all the kids playing outside, running back and forth. They go past the little window where you can't see them anymore, but you hear them in the distance, right? That's what the world is like now. Everybody's in their tiny, isolated bubble. Yeah. I used to live in the community of Haula where Pali is right now. And so I know, geographically how it's isolated and how it feels unique, that area of the island, to Oahu. It really does feel separated from the city, which is a lot like our lifestyle in Hamakua. And Pauli, what does that feel like weeks into this metropolitan slowdown? I mean, the highway itself must be a lot less busy.
Well, I can only speak for myself, but it feels wonderful. It's quiet. It's peaceful. It allows one's sense of connectivity to spread. It also is healthy for our gifts of attunement or intuition that have been passed on for generations. I was really amused, sort of, observing all of the incessant reports and analysis of the COVID-19, its causes, what are its solutions, etc. And I was amused because in my field, or at least in the college where I work, the College of Business, everything is so focused on you must quantify. If you don't quantify, then it's subject to either myth or something that's not real in the sense that it's not seen, you can't touch it, feel it, etc. And so here I was observing these highly educated experts, and almost obsessively overanalyzing data, and each one coming up with different interpretation, second guessing others. Then there's changes of direction, and essentially causing delays and slowing down of what should we really do. And then I'm reminded that watching the conclusion of a lot of this after each day is that when it's all said and done, and after all of this obsessive review of data and debating it over and over again, and having asked for others' opinions, I realized it came down to a gut feeling. Someone thought, well, perhaps. Others out in the field said, perhaps. Different people throughout the nation were saying perhaps, because they were feeling something else. And it's that intuition. And that's the same kind of intuition that have guided our ancestors across the greatest ocean in the world, knowing very little what was beyond the horizons, but they boldly turned into the wind. They didn't intoxicate themselves by the sound of their own voices declaring, what should it be? This is how we perceive it. Therefore, it can't be measured. Therefore, it doesn't exist. No. At the end of the day, as your theme say, you listen to your heart.
Yeah.
Yes. As long as it's really your heart and not somebody, trying to scare the crap out of you,
Oh, yeah. I think you would know the difference.
Or indigestion.
Well, I know that you would know the difference. I'm just not sure that everybody else knows the difference. Because they've been trained for so many years to stop listening to their heart and turn on the TV.
Yeah.
Well, I'm an example of old dogs can learn new tricks.
Yeah, I hope to be.
I was going to say, a lot of times a heart attack is mimicked by indigestion. Yeah. And these days, and they keep telling us to listen to our guts, listen to your gut, your instinct. It could just be the chili. It could just be really bad chili you're listening to. I mean, I must confess, there does seem to be a vacuum of leadership in the moment, and I've never been one who's like to point at the problem without offering a solution, but sure am stymied by this policy, political leadership problem at the moment.
Yeah.
Gee, did I
I,
say
I would
Wow.
say that the incident or the event exposes the fact that we have shitty leadership, all the time. You know, we have the best leaders that money can buy. And that's unfortunately not good enough.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And
Well, there's
whose
the other
money?
point too. There's the other point too. We need to keep in mind is that we have excellent leadership in so many different areas, but they don't choose their disasters. So you may have the knowledge, skills, and abilities to deal with a tempest at sea, but what do you do with an earthquake if you've never experienced one? So you can't, if your leadership style aligns with the disaster, I think we can see the light in the tunnel very, very quickly. If it's not, everybody's scrambling every which way to make sense of it all, and hopefully to make the right decisions to pull us through.
Yeah. And I think that's a good description for our leaders who sort of organically involved and are oftentimes volunteers or part of a community group as opposed to political leaders.
I agree, Jim. In fact, the most important thing that's missing, in my personal opinion, there's no spiritual component here. Everything is hard science. But if we look
or
at
soft science,
indigenous wisdom that can be brought to bear, they are more attuned in many different ways than all the medical technology is not. So it's not an either or. As it is, we need to be able to have the capacity to seamlessly blend, to seamlessly weave traditional wisdom with modern science, knowledge, and technology. One by itself cannot stand, but together we can forge the kinds of tools and the kinds of solutions that can make a difference.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, survival for survival's sake can lead to a really odd post office address. I mean, we might all end up in tiny little test tubes, all terribly safe, hermetically sealed off from the world and each other, just to make sure we're not, I don't know, passing around bad genes.
Oh, you mean like
viruses,
kind of like Keanu Reeves in The Matrix?
Yeah, you never know. Who doesn't want to be like Keanu Reeves?
Well, not if he's in one of those battery pods. I don't think I want to be that.
I hear that. And we may be these little battery pods for the rest of society, society's needs. If you stop and think about the fact that altruism suggests that we live for the good of the community until we're all used up and then tossed out. I only say this because my 64th birthday, as you know, was day before yesterday. And I was just humming that Paul McCartney tune all day. Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64? So, I got a bag of chips. And I got
by the way,
so yeah.
The answer to that question, as far as it refers to you, is yes, we still need you. We'll still feed you.
I wonder about that sometimes. The infirmary that and the infirmity that I've suffered, in the last few years, for those of you who've been following the charades, has really prepared me for old age. It's like everything I get back is a bonus. It's like I've already seen what it's like physically to lay there like a 98-year-old, unable to lift my head or drink water. So now everything I'm getting back is really received with such gratitude. I'm amazed. I really had almost hoped to be more bitter.
No, I want you to turn into Mr. Wilson.
And by that, I hope you mean Tom Hanks, as in Rita Wilson's husband.
No, I meant like the next door neighbor to Dennis the Menace.
I was afraid you meant that. I was afraid you meant that.
Oh, you know, if you're looking for great movies as metaphors to what's going on right now, which is, of course, the essence of science fiction, my two recommendations are, of course, I mentioned The Matrix, and the other one is V for Vendetta, one of Natalie Portman's best movies ever. It's a tremendous film about how government can, in fact, get caught up in the quest for power and what the results can be.
You wouldn't know anything about that, would you, Polly? Government,
Well,
power,
I don't know if I
quest of.
have that, but I know there's a fundamental quest that I think it's in all of us in different degrees, and that's man's search for meaning, and everywhere you can tease it out of the narratives, the conversations. You know, why am I here? What is my purpose, kind of thing, and then it seems that most give up and just settle for survival. The problem or the challenges that come with that is that when we lack that intrinsic sense of self-worth of who we are, there's a tendency to create a false sense of security and identity through external things, particularly material goods and job titles, ranks and titles, etc. So I observe, and it even happened to myself, that when you have a little sense of personal purpose beyond just surviving or having some impressive, prestigious, glorified job title, I had used materialism and the pursuit of it to sort of quell that empty feeling inside. And this turned around only when I understood the importance of being self-aware and understanding intrinsically what is valuable. And where did I learn that? I had to go home and spend time with the elders and the wisdom of my family and my culture, and I began to understand who I am, why I am, that I am part of the earth, I am part of nature, I'm part of all things. Once that crystallized, that search for meaning for me sort of dissolved. And as a consequence, I become more resilient, emotionally, psychologically, and I did not waver from the course. I know exactly which star that I'm navigating towards. There's no confusions. The waves and the currents that are contrary will not redirect my efforts. But until we all reach that point, that we are part of something greater than ourselves, that we are connected to things that are so fundamental to the balance and harmony of all things in all life, we will continue to search for meaning. and fundamental to that too was learning stories. We need to bring back stories, or we need to change the current story.
Yeah.
New stories or ancient stories and new tunes like Kalani's compositions.
You know,
Yes.
I was thinking how elegant that picture you painted and how eloquent it is that that moment of awareness seems to be directly attached to the idea of mortality. It's like we run around, discovering the world, discovering what it is we have in front of us on our plates at the table. And just when we think we have a handle on what is right in front of us, what we like, the things we gathered. And I don't like the broccoli, but I do like the Brussels sprouts. It's like when you gather up all those things you like, they're all going away. Right. And then this awareness of the transience of it, this awareness of the fleeting fitfulness of life. Right. It's like this idea that you're going to lose it all right after you figured out what you like. I just figured out I like chocolate and vanilla. Right. I'm not into Tutti Frutti and, all the others, the apricot sundae and that. Nah, I like chocolate and vanilla. And weirdly, I like them together, sort of that half and half generation. I figured out I like chocolate and vanilla at the same time, right? It's like I like both ice creams. And they don't make a good chocolate and vanilla. They make good chocolate and they make good vanilla, right? So to have my dream come true, I have to improvise, adapt, get both the chocolate and the vanilla, and figure out how I'm going to apportion my resources to have it the way I want it with the least amount of disruption. Now, Thomas Jefferson referred to that as rational anarchism, right? How does everybody get to do exactly what it is they want to do as long as they don't negatively impact anything else? Now, that's a utopian society. I'm not sure we can get there, but this moment, this time out in the global life is it's a real interesting look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's almost a great description. It is a great description of how different organisms live together on the planet, Until we start putting the Roundup down and get rid of those bad ones.
That's exactly it, right? We decide which one is the weed. Hey, I think a long time ago, people way over there in England and Denmark decided people way over here were weeds.
Well, yeah, maybe, yeah. I get the analogy. I think that, well, not to frame everything as a class war, but there's no doubt that people who are born into power and riches oftentimes see the serfs as their tools. And that's maybe why we're all here, is to learn that it's not about just us. It's about everybody and how we all affect each other.
Precisely. And what I meant by the metaphor was, and I'm going to extend this metaphor. So the lowly serfs and the slave class of Europe, they're the wheat. You know what I mean? And the rich, they control the sides. They control the sickles. They paid a lot of money for these expensive made out of metal sickles and technology. And they're not the wheat at all. They're the guys consuming the bread in the castle, right? So what happened with the bread consumers who control the sickles that keep the wheat in line is they went around the world and got rid of all the rest of the forests. They looked at the rest of Mother Nature and said, oh, weeds, and got rid of them all. And they're trying to replace it all with wheat. Well, in this day and age of climate change, those temperate food sources, they're endangered. And so now we have to look back at tropical food sources. And that's even what we're working on. What we're looking at is how do we come back with a less monotheistic diet? You know, less reliant on just the wheats and the barleys and the breads of the world, but eat a more balanced diet by recognizing all the rest of the food groups.
So you mean don't just stick with a burger, throw some bacon and cheese and some onion rings on there too.
Yeah, you see,
Oh,
I
it means add
love
more
that. That
breadfruit.
was so American. What's that, Bali?
We need to eat more breadfruit.
Yes.
Right, precisely. So, I mean, I love the fact that, oh, wait a minute, I mean, you shouldn't just eat a piece of bread with some meat in it, like a burger. You should have the bread with the meat in it, but tomatoes and lettuce too. That would be so international. It's like, no. I think what we need is breadfruit, and maybe some fish in between.
Oh, I was just thinking about, we make these patties for breakfast out of ulu and mix in, garlic and peppers. And I was just thinking the other day, how would a great kielbasa sausage be crumbled up in there?
Right? And a pork sausage with a breadfruit patty would be something we could develop, manufacture, produce, and market right here in Hawaii.
Hey, is this thing almost over? I'm getting hungry.
Yeah, no, it is. It is, in fact, almost over. Man, you guys, this is what we need to think and talk about. And as opposed to daily assaults on our sanity about coronavirus, is conversations daily. And we only have this weekly on how we might develop our economy back in a more just, equitable, sustainable, and regenerative fashion. And this idea of breadfruit or ulu hash browns, fresh frozen out to our families in Honolulu, along with, pork products, sausages. We need to get another slaughterhouse here, a sausage making factory invested in on the Big Island by Honolulu investors to create food sources for Honolulu.
Yeah. One of the things that, not to regress too much into the situation we find ourselves in, but one of the things that Dr. Bush pointed out in this video was that, if you look at maps where these hotspots are, most of them also are densely populated and have a lot of pollutants in the air, car exhaust, et cetera, et cetera. And he said that, the reason that places don't get hit as strong, and maybe one of those places is Hawaii, is that because we have fresh air here. We have a lot of fresh air. And the volcanoes have been calmed down, and we don't have what you'd call a lot of polluting industry. And we get a lot of sunshine, so our vitamin D levels are up. And that's part of our overall health. So he said that what should have happened is that everybody should have stopped driving, got on their bicycles, started walking, on their skateboards. How do you get from here to there without polluting the environment? And intuitively, that makes a lot of sense.
Oh, but there's all the tourism economy. So I like, how do we come back without regenerating that beast of an economy that actually pollutes our environments, Pali?
Well, I I really feel we've got an opportunity to, or society in general, particularly the systems under which govern our existence at this time, to sort of reorganize ourselves in a way that it can meet the essential material needs of all people. But it has to be done in ways that realign and fulfill us spiritually and heal the earth. I also feel that we need to reassess our values. Let me start with defining wisdom as has been taught to me, that wisdom is the ability to discern and commune, to actually feel and sense and be part of the rhythms, currents, and patterns of mana, the energy flow. And when you're able to discern them, not to try to alter them because they're immutable, but then to conform to them. And that's very difficult for a species created who wants to control itself. So it's very difficult to let go and to conform to the rhythms and the patterns of mana. And COVID-19, and it takes reflection to be able to do that. You actually must cultivate this wisdom. It's so in you. You cultivate it by reflection, by spending time, by giving more than you can, by acts of compassion, acts of kindness, etc. And that kind of reflection can build that and builds your intuitions, etc. The interesting paradox is that COVID-19 has gifted us with that opportunity to reflect. So it may be all bad in one way, but if we all look at it just in that way, we'll never benefit from what has happened in a more holistic sense.
Yes.
Thanks, you guys. And man, I always benefit from a conversation with you on a Sunday morning. And Jimmy, thanks for joining us. Pali, as always, every Sunday at 7 a.m. Try to bring a little bit of, I guess, happiness to the world, or at least take away some of the mystery. That's what Buddha used to say. The more enlightened you become, the uglier the world gets, because, you become aware of all the injustice. But because you're becoming more enlightened, you don't judge it. And so, the world becomes more beautiful in a strange way. So, loving you guys, hoping for the best. Sunday morning, thank you, brother. Put my arms around you. We're out. I was going to play our sponsorship role, but we're out of time. Here's a little song from the Heartland. Thanks again, you guys. I'll see you next Sunday. Aloha.
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 Okay, ready? Okay, so stop. Okay.
Then now
Ready?
we can start whenever.
You rolling? See? Rolling. 1, 2, 3.
We're on the road to nowhere. Come on inside. alright. It's not very far away, and it's growing day by day. Yeah, it's alright, baby, it's alright. We're on the road to nowhere. Come on inside, taking that ride to nowhere. We'll take that ride. Maybe you wonder where you are. I don't care. Here's where time is on our side. Take you there, take you there. Feeling okay this morning, and you know, here's where time is on our side. Take you there, take you there. You're on the couch, paradise. There you go, there you go.